Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Painter Vidcast. My name's Terry Danich-Gimiak II, and I'm your digital painter. And today what we're going to be talking about are shapes and how much of what we draw begins with shapes. Now this is going to be a multi-part series because from shapes we're going to move into what we call forms, okay? Because in real life we're 3D, we're not two-dimensional objects. So kind of stick with this one, and then later on we're going to go even a little farther and figure out how these shapes can then be converted into three-dimensional objects, which is what everything is made up of when we talk about drawing and painting. Before we go any further, let me remind you to stop by, if you're watching this on YouTube, stop by thedigitalpainter.com. That's the website where I host all of my tutorials, as well as a whole variety of other things. Enjoy it, have fun with it, etc. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I love subscribers. It doesn't do much for me other than I feel really cool, but yeah, I got nothing there. All right, let's go ahead and switch over to, we're going to be working in Corel Painter. Now you can work in any medium, or any program, but I just have Corel Painter up because that was the last one I was putzing around with. It could have been ArtRage, could have been PaintStorm Studio, could have been any of the other ones that I work in. What do we know about shapes? Well, we start with three very basic shapes. We have the triangle, we have the circle, and we have the square. So let me go ahead. We're going to start a new document. And we're just going to do 72 DPI. There we go. And if we're working, I'm just going to grab, I'm in 2B pencil right now. So the three shapes we've got square. We have triangle. And we have a circle, very poor circle, my weakest shape, okay? Using all three of these, we can create any number of drawings. One of the things that I like to teach my beginning designers in my theater design classes is that if you can break down objects into the simplest forms, it's going to become much easier to create whatever it is that you're creating. See, everything's drawable, everything can be drawn, but a lot of times we get a roadblock in our brain, and that roadblock says, wow, this is way too complicated. How am I ever going to draw this? Well, that's what I'm going to work on today, is we're going to figure out ways to break it down, make it easier for you, so that when you're drawing something, when you see something to draw, you don't think, wow, that's a really complicated shape. Instead, what you think is, that is this shape, this shape, this shape, and then you draw it from there. All right? So what I want to do, now one of the things, we're looking at these square, triangle, and circle, but, this can go a little farther, right? So you have square can turn into a rectangle. Your triangle can be any really three-sided object, and your circle could be small, it could be big, and it can also be an oval, okay? A very poor oval at that, but an oval nonetheless, okay? So understand that though I say square, triangle, and circle, there are variations on those three things. We're not kind of stuck at, hey, this is a square, hey, this is a triangle, hey, this is a circle, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up some images that I downloaded. These, I just did a Google search, and that's if I can find them. That's one of those things. Oh, because they're not in that folder. Silly rabbit. Tricks are for kids. If we come over here and we open up. There we go. Let's start with this one. This is your regular ice cream cone. What shapes do we see in the ice cream cone? Well, let me grab a pen tool. We'll go with a cool color. Let's go with, we can't do pink because there we go. We'll do a green. Okay, and I'm going to actually grab a bigger brush. There we go. So the first thing we have here is we have Let me increase the size a little bit. There we go. We have a triangle, right? Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Within that triangle, if we're going to talk about the texture, we have lots of little squares. Boom, boom. I'm not going to do all of these squares. That would take me forever. Okay. The ice cream itself, again, we look at it, we see a very complicated image, but what it actually is, it's just two circles, right? So our first, oops, I'm going to say oops a lot today, aren't I? There we go. We have our first circle, and then what we have down here is a second, slightly larger circle. So now we have the basis for our ice cream. Everything beyond this is details, okay? So if I were to then go into this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this down a little bit. There we go. I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to grab my pencil tool again. And let's go to kind of a grayish. So if I'm drawing this, right, I'm going to start with my basic shapes. Let me take, oh, it's the base, so I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make things a little larger to make it easier for you to be able to see. There we go. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to draw my basic shapes. But I'm not going to finish there. No. Because then, if I were drawing this, not tracing. This is obviously tracing because I want you to see what I'm doing. Well, actually, we could turn it off. We're going to look at this area right in here. So if we turn it off, and of course, the thing with Corel Painters, you want to make sure that you put down a color underneath. There we go. So we're going to be working on that area right there. So we'll turn that off. And what you're doing then, I keep turning off the wrong one. There we go. What we're doing then is then this is merely texture, right? So this is kind of sticking out to there. If we remember correctly, this circle comes in like this, boom, boom. Now this is actually a fairly round circle to this point. Boom, boom. We do have our triangle here. I'm going to redraw that so we can see it a little better. Okay. Turn on that underlayer again. Actually, what I'm going to do is there we go. So we can see we started to create. Now, I didn't obviously follow those lines exactly. The lines should have, come like this. But if you're looking at this, as a reference photo rather than over top of, which is what I'm doing. And then we'll turn this on again. So we have that. Then we know this comes out like this, but we know that this actually has little textures here, right? And we have some of that texture over here because it creates that flat look. This comes up like this. Let's bring it up again. All right. And it looks like I see, without having the image, my textures went a little low, but it doesn't necessarily look bad. I mean, still looks like we're moving in the right direction for an ice cream, right? And what I'd probably do is I'd probably do this here and maybe take a little bit of texture here because the ice cream isn't necessarily flat. A little bit of texture there. We turn off the green now, and you can see we're starting to look like an ice cream cone. Okay. Now this is very sketchy. This is very quickly, but this is how using shapes can help you create that image that you're trying to create. Okay. Turn on my side a little bit. There'd be a little bit of shadow up here. And I've done all this with 3 shapes and then texture. And that texture, I'm calling it texture. You could, if you wanted to, break that down even into further shapes. So if we were to bring this back, and let's turn off of our pencil. turn our green back on. Because if we wanted to, I'm going to use a different color, but you have, what, essentially another circle here. Looks like you have a bit of a square there. This would start out as a circle and a circle. So there you have it. For this ice cream cone, triangles and circles are the winner. Let's go ahead and pull up another image. Let's grab this coffee cup. And actually, I don't want to do that. Yes, I do. Silly rabbit. Coffee cup is the one I want. So what makes up the coffee cup? Well, looking at it, it's a square and a circle. Now you're thinking to yourself, a square and a circle? That doesn't make any sense. Well, watch what happens when I do a square and then we've got a circle. Okay. And that's it. That's your coffee cup, a square and a circle. Now you're probably saying to yourself, but the bottom, you didn't get all the way to the bottom. Well, you could do actually one of two things here, and I'm going to increase the size here. You could either say, well, this is texture, or this is another, and let me change the color. This could be another giant circle. And I'm not going to draw all the way around. But you see how that could be another giant circle, right? So that can be looked at in either of those ways. And then finally, let's look at one more image. So we have a building, and the great thing about buildings is they're all really made up again of these basic shapes. So I'm going to grab a color, and let's start looking at those basic shapes, shall we? We begin with a triangle. Let me increase the size of this a little bit. We have our triangle. We have squares. And really, what is almost every window in the real world is a square. So, okay. We have, if we want to, we can turn it sideways here. And we have rectangles. Okay. And obviously we have more here. Okay. Even where it looks like, you know, you've got some curves, the tops of the windows here are really just circles. Now, obviously, you're only using part of that circle. You're not using the entirety of the circle, but it's still a circle. It doesn't change the fact that what you're looking at is part of that circle. Okay? Even some of our drapery. Circle. Another circle. And then, of course, we have a rectangle. And then in the end, what you do is you just come in and you erase the parts that you don't need, right? Now, obviously, I'm using big old markers to kind of bring home the point. And that's a point of this one is I'm not trying to be uber accurate right now, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you that everything can be made with these basic shapes. Now you're probably sitting and saying, "Hey Terry, these are simple things, but how do you do something that's really complex?" Well, I got good news for you. Because my son is a lover of dinosaurs, I thought, what could be more complex? And immediately I came up with a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And you're thinking, wow, now there is a giant, okay? But this too can be broken down into simple shapes. So for example, this part of the leg, Look at that. That's a circle. No doubt about that. We've got a triangle here. Got a rectangle here. Got another rectangle here. And then how about we finish off with, I don't know, maybe a rectangle? Okay. Here we've got another circle. Joints, a lot of joints are circles. And then we build off of that with a rectangle, and this could be considered a rectangle. Okay. Back here, we know what this is, right? We've got a giant triangle. Now I'm coming out to here to show the triangle, but obviously you'd need to move it a little bit. So there's a giant triangle. Up here, we've got more of the same, right? We actually have a curve here. So this can be another circle. And then you could do this one of two ways, but I'm just going to do a rectangle and a rectangle. And you do this across the whole body, right? And you can see where using these basic forms, you're going to start getting exactly what it is the animal is. Now, I'm a little arbitrary here. I'm choosing that to be a rectangle. This is more of a trapezoid, but again, close to a rectangle. And if we turn off, so if we scroll down, if we turn off the dinosaur, look at that. We have the dinosaur in 3 shapes: squares, circles, and triangles. If we wanted to, we could finish it out in a couple areas that I hadn't finished. Boom, boom, boom. What do we got here? We got another rectangle, right? Another rectangle here. Now, understand that, yes, this is very, very simplistic. This is very base. You wouldn't look at this and go, "Oh, look, I'm done. Look at that. I've completely finished my dinosaur. He's a thing of beauty. Finished." But what it is helping us to do is, especially for beginning drawers, it's helping you to understand how to break things down and look at things with a different eye. Don't look at the composition as a giant whole. Look at it as pieces that need to be put together. I do the same thing when I do my painting in my tech class. We use a grid system there, which we're not into right now with this. We use a grid system. But every time we put the grid on, my students look at me and say, "But that's not really helping. It's still really complicated." And I look at them and I say, "Listen, this is what you need to do. You need to look at each square individually and look at the lines within the square. Don't look at the giant picture." That's what we're doing here. We're looking at the individual pieces. And you can do this with anything, with organics, with architectural, anything that you're looking to draw. Break it down into these basic shapes. Now, I said earlier that these are basic shapes. We're going to be moving into forms next. And forms are taking the basic shapes and turning them into 3-dimensional objects. All right? I hope this helps you a little bit. My name is Terry Dana Jakimiak II. I am the digital painter, and continue working on your art. Take care.